Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com.
Welcome to another episode of Rural Heritage on RFD TV. Today we're with Spot Rouse at his S&S Farms. Is that what I call it? S&S Farm? S&S Ranch.
That's right.
Okay. Near Seven Springs, North Carolina. And we're going to visit with some children who are coming out for a field day, and we're going to spend some time going through his various buildings. But before we do all that, I wanted to visit with Spot about how this all got started. Spot, did you grow up in this area?
Yes, Joe, I grew up about 10 miles from here, reared on a farm, and we had 7 brothers, 2 sisters, and we all worked on the farm until we went off to school, and I wanted to keep that heritage, so when I got out of school, I came back to the farm.
Okay. How long has this been a Rouse farm?
I bought this farm here in 1976, and I've been very fortunate to be able to add to it 6 times, which is very unusual. And it's turned into quite a farm now. We're very proud of it. I have 2 sons that help run the business. The oldest one looks after the swine part. The other son looks after the poultry part. And I look after the cattle, the runnels, and try to keep them going as well as myself.
In addition to it being an active large farm, you also have a historical educational aspect going on here. Talk to me a little bit about how that got started.
Yes, my wife and I decided about 6 years ago that we didn't want the past to leave us. So what we decided to do is build these facilities and give back to the younger generation, and also keep our past going forward. And therefore, in a lot of these buildings, you'll see a tremendous lot of equipment that's pulled by a horse or mule or a team of horses, etc. Back in the 10, 15s, 20s, along there. I have probably about every piece that was used back then. It's in very good condition, and people enjoy coming through here and looking at it, Joe. It's very, very fascinating. Sometimes in the first museum, it takes them approximately 2 hours just to get out of there, because they're telling their grandchildren. It makes me feel so good. They're telling their grandchildren, well, that's what I had to use when I was on the farm. You know, back then you had a cargo wagon. You carried your product to the market, and then you would take the mules and unharness them and put them in what we call a livery stable, and then when your product was sold, you'd head back home to the farm. And I have some of those wagons that were used back then today.
Well, let's wander around and look at some of your stuff.
Sure. You'll see what I'm talking about when you come in here.
Sure.
Joe, this is what we call a general store. There's a tremendous lot of antiques in here, as you can see, but the majority of them are antiques that were used in the kitchen back in the early 1900s on up till mid 40s or so. And a lot of these came out of the northern part of the United States due to the fact that there was a lot of public jobs there. And down in the South, there wasn't as many public jobs. We had to do a lot of bartering. In other words, you help me, I help you. And so Mom or Dad didn't have a lot of extra money, it seemed like. But up in the north, they had some money to the point to where they might afford to buy a piece for Mom to make it much easier in the kitchen. The line of sausage stuffers, those were the very first ones that were made. In other words, you just pushed it in by hand. It was a little bit more difficult to use them. But whereas down at the bottom, you have what they call, in other words, they were much, much better, could do much more work. And I did not know until I started collecting these that they made a 2, 4, 6, and 8 quart sausage stuffer. I didn't know that. So I have them there complete, the 2, 4, 6, and 8.
Wow.
And there's another larger churn. And I'm in the town Seven Springs area. And way back in time, they had what they called the 7 springs, had 7 springs called mineral water. And what they would do is they have a big hotel down there. And it was just awesome because the people would go off the farm and spend maybe 3 or 4 days or 5, down at the hotel, and he would put you up and feed you, and he'd give you some water every day, and depends on what was wrong with you. So there were 7 springs, and each one of them was good for something. Maybe the 7th was good for ulcers. Maybe the 5th one was good for nerves. Maybe the 2nd was good for heart problems, etc. But anyway, all the people believed that. But you know what? I truly think sometimes, as hard as people work back there, Joe, I feel like the 3 or 4 day rest done them more good than anything. But nevertheless,
Yes,
but they would drink water out of each one of them springs, and they would feel so much better when they returned back home. But this is the first. This particular right here is the first agitator wash machine.
Oh wow!
The very first one.
My goodness.
And of course, everybody knows what the crops are. That's what we stored meat in way back in our smokehouse at home on the farm. What I want to show you is this is a 2 Cob Corn Sheller. I've got 4 or 5 1 Cob, but I don't have but 1 2 Cob. First one I've ever seen, I was at a sale in Pennsylvania, so I decided to purchase it. And this is my tobacco display. Down in North Carolina here, we are flue-cured tobacco. We crop the leaves off, we transport it to a barn where these burners, etc., and we start a heat under it. It takes about 4 to 5 days back then to cure a barn of tobacco out. We would put it on sticks. We transport it with a truck like this, and then after it was cured, we'd take it out of the barn. Then we would take it off the sticks, grate it to some degree. Then we would put it in one of these baskets. Then we would cover it up with one of these tobacco sheets, and that's the way we transported it to town. This is the transplanter that set the tobacco out. 2 people would sit on it and be pulled by a team of mules, and later on they converted them to pull with a tractor. But I remember when they were pulled with mules, and you can see right here they have a team of mules that were pulling there, and some of them use slides to pull the tobacco to the barn. They put a mule in what we call a truck middle. They'd have 4 rows, a truck middle, 4 rows, and the mule or mules would go down in that truck row, and you would crop the tobacco by hand and get an armful. You carry it over there and put it in the slide or in the tobacco truck. And these were tobacco trucks, just like we had at home when I was a young boy.
You'd need a nice slow-stepping team of mules on a transplanter, wouldn't you?
Yes, but it's pretty easy to train a team of mules. Once you work with them for a while, they'll do what you want them to do. But that is correct. You need a team that's not real fast walking unless you have some extremely good setters back there. And this is the stalk cutter here. This is when we got to getting all the tobacco out of the field, we took the stalk cutter and we cut the stalks. And
that would chop up the trash left on the field.
That would chop up the stalks.
Decompose faster.
Then we were able to start disting and breaking and start preparing for another crop. This is a potato digger over here, Joe. Ice potato digger. It doesn't do very well with sweet potatoes, but it does run very well with ice potatoes. And this is the ice potato planter. I know there's a tongue laying over the box, but it's real unique. Pulled by a team of horses or a team of mules, and it does a real unique job.
It's a beauty.
And it's such good shape, Joe. I wanted to preserve it, so I don't use it anymore. I want people to be able to see it, be able to come through here and look at this stuff, and just reminisce about it and tell her.
What do these plant here? These 2 here.
One row Guyana sowers primarily, and that's what they used back then. Once they got the field prepared for planting, I'm saying they dished it, then they broke the land, then they would harrow it, and then they would run the rows with a marker, with the cultivator and the team of mules. Then they would take this here. A lot of times the cultivator we'll see as we go on through the buildings, we'll see a cultivator with a Guyana harp on it. But a lot of times though, if they were planting single, they would use this to put the fertilizer out with.
This is what we call a bean picker. That's really unique. It's in exceptionally good shape, and it does a great job. And you put a team of mules in front of it, the tongue is up above, put a team of mule horses in front of it, and your beans come out, and there's a guy back there that takes them and scoops them up and puts them in bags and ties them. And when you run out of room, you unload and you go again. This is what we talked about. Once we get our tobacco set out, or once our corn starts coming up to where we get tall enough, or our beans or whatever, peas, then we would take this one row 2-horse cultivator, and we would cultivate our crop. And there was a tremendous lot of these used back then. And some of them, as you see in another museum I had, you'll see a fertilizer harper on them, where they would put a little side dressing to them, a little bit more fertilizer to them. But you would use that one row a lot of times to put fertilizer to them to start with. This right here is what we call a Hackney Wagon. There was a tremendous lot of Hackney wagons on the farms back in the early teens and 20s, 30s. And what they would do with this wagon primarily is they would actually go to town and transport just the small goods back and forth. They wouldn't actually transport a lot of tobacco product, farm products. They would use this wagon right here to do that with. And the reason is because the wheels are wider, it's a much heavier built wagon, and they could load this with tobacco, or load it with grain or corn, ears of corn, or whatever, and they could carry it to the market and wouldn't have any problem as far as it getting there and back due to the fact that the way it's built. And as you see up here, there's a lot of plows that were all different type plows. When your crop come up, a lot of times you plow one row at a time. You plow one side, or you actually plow what we call a middle buster. These plows right here, you go down and plow the middle out, and it would plow both sides of the road. And a lot of these were used back then. These are the one-row planters here. I was telling you earlier about, well, my dad used to use that, and he put peas on one side and corn on the other side. And what they do when the fall of the year, like I say, we go out and gather the corn, but the peas would run up on the corn stalk. Mom would have them to pick before frost. And that was unique. But like I say, coal, all those were made by coal manufacturing. And there's a lot of different models, different styles. And then, of course, later on, you know, things progress, and we've come out with what they call a 2-row planter, which would hook a team of mules to it. I hope you can get a good view of that. But they would hook a team of mules to it. And I mean, they were really stepping up when that came out. A lot of this stuff behind you is one row pulled by a single mule in most cases. There's a peanut planter. There's a cotton planter. Cops made a lot of planter, and you know, back then, but there's a lot of different type planters as well. I think you'll see there's 1, 2, 3 different type cotton planters here. Actually, there's another. There's a 4th one over there. Different type planters.
And there's a peanut planter over there too, huh?
That's a peanut planter over there. You get this stuff singled out. Now, there's a cotton planter there.
Wow.
And this is a Guyana. So we had one just like this when I was a young boy. I've used
That's
it
for fertilizer?
Yes, I used it a many a time.
So the auger brings it out,
yes,
and the wheel busts it up if you got any that's
clogged.
Yeah.
And you know, people just don't realize just how smart the people were back then. They could take these little notches here on this wheel, take this gear, and they could set it to where it would put so much out per acre. It was just amazing how they could do things back then. And they brought that technology right on up today, even though they're using it in much larger equipment. But the concept is the same. Yeah. In other words, you have to have a setting on every piece of equipment so you'll know what you're doing.
That's true.
And they were just unique how they did that back then. And a sprayer, they do the same with that. A grain drill, you said it was just amazing. So a lot of people don't really realize what this is right here, what this piece is right here. But
it's a broom.
It looks like a broom, but it's got corn shucks.
Yeah.
And what I realized what it was when I saw it on the auction, I realized right quick what it was. When I was growing up, we had boards on our floor, and Some rooms would have a rug maybe, but what Mom would do is she'd take that old cornstarch in the fall of the year, and she'd take this mop, it acted as a sander, and she put that cornstarch on that floor, and she scrub it. She sand it so with children, when we got up out of bed or something, the boards would be smooth, we wouldn't get a splinter in our foot. And that was unique. Boys and girls, today you have big tractors that have big equipment. When you passing by the fields, I know you see them working, but 70, 80, 90 years ago, when you went by passing through by the fields, you saw a single horse or maybe a team of horses or a team of mules, and what they would be doing is they would be pulling a piece of this equipment that you see in this building here today. I'll just explain to you right quick some of these pieces. This is a transplanter here that was pulled by a team of mules. You can see the front of it where we put the double tree in, and they were pulled by a team of mules. Later on in the year, they converted them to pull the tractors, but this one didn't ever get converted. There's what we call a hay rake. When we cut the hay, we have to rake it up so we can bale it. You can see it has a seed sower, a grain drill, a lot of people call them. That's pulled by a team of horses or a team of mules, and then we have what we call a manure spreader. That's when Daddy has to clean the barn out with horse manure, cow manure, and he takes it, he loads it, and he takes it and pulls it out there with a team of horses or a team of mules, and he spreads it in the field. We use it for fertilizer. And this particular wagon here is what Mom and Dad or Grandma and Granddaddy used to haul the crops basically out of the field into the market primarily. They used it for both purposes. And this is, of course, the dump cart. They used that a lot on the farm about putting corn, various farm products in and carrying it up and dumping it because they could hurry up and go back and load it again. There's a cultivator over here that has the fertilizer harp on it. They were used quite a bit, particularly in preparing the field for planting the biker, whatever, so you could ridge it up, put the fertilizer out at the same time. That other piece of equipment is a bean picker. It was pulled by a team of mules as well. The beans would come through back in the back. A man would stay back there and shovel them out with a scoop and scoop them in a bag. Once he got several bags back there, he'd stop, unload them, and go again. All y'all gather around here. Get you all in here. And stay right there and look at me this way.
I think I milked a sheep once.
That's right. How about this? Exciting. Okay, just come right on in. Okay, boys and girls, you know about corn, I'm sure. You've seen corn growing in the fields on a corn stalk? Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And, excuse me. All right. It's growing on a corn stalk. Well, it starts out at a little plant, and you'll get an opportunity to pick you out a plant today if you want to, a little seed, and carry it home with you and watch it grow. But anyway, this comes off the corn stalk. Harvester goes through and harvests it. Then it goes to the mill. Well, it goes to what we call a grist meal, which that is what this is here if you're going to make a meal out of it. We crank this machine up. We put that shell corn that we shell, we put it in the pan up here. It grinds it up, and it comes in this screen here. And if you watch your mother cook cornbread at home or hush puppies, you have, she'll get a little bag and it's called cornmeal. And what it is, that's the way we make it. But first of all, you got to grow the corn. Second, you got to process the corn. You got to get it ready. You got for grinding. After it's ground, it's sent to the store, put in bags. We factory sell it at the store, and that's where Mama purchases it. That's what I told you in the beginning. Everything that's purchased at that store has to, primarily if it's food, has to be grown in the fields first. That's the first thing we have to do. We have to grow it first. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this sheller here. And I'm going to let you see how this sheller shells this corn, and the corn comes out in the bucket and the cob comes here. Everybody drop your corn in there. Let them drop. Now look. Okay, did everybody get the idea of what's going on here? Real good, should. Elsie. That's the name of the cow. The no-kick milk cow. The rules, one person at a time, okay? Must be assisted by an adult. Do not pull or push on Elsie. Okay, we don't want to hurt Elsie. All right, who's going to be first? Is that right at the close? Just squeeze it. All right, okay, look at there. How about that? Isn't that neat? Go ahead, Lacey. How about that? Ooh-wee. Good girl, two at a time. Squeeze it. Good gracious. Look at there. Look at there. All right. You got to hang on now.
Do it with two hands. Here. Ready?
Yeah.
Push on it with me.
Squeeze it. There you go. Well, I know you've seen a lot of people ride a horse, and naturally they have to have a saddle on them. And I just want to explain to you that when you go to saddle a horse, the first thing you definitely want to do is you want to brush your horse, then you want to put a saddle blanket on him. After you put a saddle blanket on him, next comes the saddle. And what we do here is, this is dirt here, this is stirrups, that's the saddle horn. Throwing your feet over that way. Then you want to get up there on him? All right, take your hand with the saddle horn. Take your hand with that saddle. That's the boy. Get up there, take the reins. Let me see. Okay, Lacey. Like I say, this is the collar. A lot of people use what they call a collar pad, but you don't have to. This is the collar, and when you put the collar on a horse, you want to be able to stick your hand in right here. You don't want to be able to stick your fist in. You want to be able to stick your hand in, okay? Your husband has to get you a horse on the farm side. And the bit, I'll go back to that, you want just a little wrinkle on each side the mouth on the bit. Not a lot, but just a little bit, okay? I showed you how to put the collar on next. And then what we do is we start with the harness. A lot of times all this comes together. The hames, the back band, the spider, and the breeching. Comes all together. And these are the trace chains. A lot of people call them tugs. Now we're going to go to what we call the plant station. And what I'm going to give you children the opportunity to do, y'all come line up here. Which seed would you like to have up there? Y'all pick you out a seed, and I'm going to plant it. We're going to plant it for you, and we're going to cover it up with a rubber band so you don't spill this in the car. Okay, we got two more. Okay. All right, we got one ready. Okay, Jane, we're going to plant his. Cover it up like that. Get home, Mama's got to give it some water. All right? Cover that up for me. You hold that now. Don't spill it. That's yours. Don't ground it. Oh. Okay, put his initial on there. What's your initial?
Sully.
S? Okay.
This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of back-to-the-land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.